So good morning from the Shem Kollel in the Tzemach Tzedek Kollel, very holy Kollel, established for the Tzemach Tzedek here in holy city of Tzfas. So today is an amazing day. Today is the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and there's a very beautiful talk. Again, you can go to ichassid.com, and they put together everything the Rebbe said for the last 4 years. We studied it yesterday, but I just want to talk about it. It's also a very special day because the political leaders have decided today. I think the story goes that maybe it was the Baal Shem Tov or the Maggid told one of his students, Daven today, decide who you want, the government or whatever kings you want, because Hashem actually makes these decisions. Everything is run by Hashem. How much more so decisions that are going to affect a lot of people. It's very interesting. I heard this from Rabbi Grari from Buffalo that the Rebbe, like every year, something like Rosh Hashanah time, he would mention something, or every year that he would mention it, like whoever was in charge of Russia would change, would be a new prime minister of Russia, a new president. But with Gorbachev, he didn't mention it because he never wanted Gorbachev to stay, because Gorbachev was the one that actually transformed it. And it really relates to our subject of today, which is kind of how to live in reality. We know that when the world was made in the month of Tishrei. But that is the natural order of reality. But there's also a supernatural order of reality. And so when Hashem thought of the Jewish people, the beginning of the month, the beginning of the Chodesh, because what's the idea of a Shana, a year? A Shana, basically, it repeats itself from year to year. But Chodesh, a new month, is a Chidush. It's something new. And so the secret of life is knowing how to work with both realities, how to be in the Shana, in this world, but also to be consistently new and to have a supernatural existence in this world. So generally speaking, the nations of the world we know are compared to the sun. Every nation of the world, most had their time in the sun. You go to Ethiopia, the airport today, the Sheba airport. Baruch Hashem, 2,000 years ago, no, 2,500 years, no, 2,000, about 800 years ago, or 900 years ago, they had a great queen, who of course came King Solomon, and this is their pride and joy from 2,900 years, Baruch Hashem, there's something to be proud about. What happened in the last 2,900 years, we're not sure. Civil war, some issues, but so why? Because the nation of the world has their time in the sun. And once that time is over, I remember hearing on radio in America, or maybe it was kind of a religious station or whatever it was. So the guy was saying it's interesting that in the scriptures, America isn't mentioned. Like you don't see in Tanakh, America. So he says it must be that America is not destined to be America forever. Right? What's forever? Forever is Jerusalem. Jerusalem is mentioned. This is a place that's forever. And we see it very clearly. Unfortunately, the left is doing a wonderful job at Obama's primary, which he openly said his primary goal was kind of destroying America, and to a large extent he was quite successful. And the goal, why? Because the nation, and who would have imagined, right, from the inside? I remember a cousin of mine before Obama was president. He said a very smart thing. He says, "Look, Hashem wants to take a country down, he can do it from within." And so, why? Because we're coming towards Mashiach. And a Mashiach, there's only one superpower. Somebody once came to the Rebbe, and they said, who do you want the next prime minister of Israel to be? The Rebbe says, he's voting for Mashiach. So, Mashiach is the next prime minister of Israel. Of course, the whole world's been set up. But the Rebbe will come into 770. The Rebbe says that's exactly how Mashiach will come. All the tzaddikim will be there. The Beis HaMikdash will come first to 770. And that's where the whole party starts. And of course, everybody is going to willingly, maybe Netanyahu by now has the humility and the knowledge to say, Rebbe, take over. We'll have a special session of the Knesset. The Knesset is very capable now, we see, of making laws quickly. They've decided to get rid of all the issues that prevent them from making laws, make a new law, redesignate. We can learn a little bit from Russia and China. the presidents are very clever. Why have elections every couple of years and worry about if you're going to get elected? They made a new law. Putin is the president forever, and whatever, the guy of China, he's the president forever. It's very simple, and it's a legal thing. So Israel's going to come up with a new law where you duly elected ever to be the new prime minister of Israel forever. And that's it. Game's over. There'll be no more bechirot, no more competitions. As it ever says, Mashiach is not a democracy. Mashiach is a theocracy. So those people that are complaining about the end of democracy are prophesizing. They're right. Democracy is ending. Theocracy is coming. Mashiach is going to come, and he's going to be the leader. Of course, there's a difference between a dictator and a leader. Right? There's a difference. A dictator imposes the will. A leader is somebody that everybody says, we want you to lead us. And of course, once that happens, there will be nations of the world. The nations will come to Israel, but everybody will come to the Rebbe. The Rebbe will tell them right from wrong. I don't know if this is true, very special Yid. And he said that one of the ideas, Mashiach is revealed, he's concealed, and he's revealed again. When he's revealed the first time, it was very, very profound when I actually learned this, because that's exactly, obviously there's a bit of a question, as somebody said to me, came from Christianity, found it difficult what Chabad believes about the Rebbe being Mashiach. But the truth of the matter is that it's very clear in the Zayar and the Medrash. I was quite impressed when I saw it, that Mashiach will be revealed. He'll be concealed. When he's revealed the first time, he'll be accepted by some of the Jewish people. He'll be concealed, and then he'll be revealed again. And then he's revealed again, he'll be accepted by everybody. And this is very, very, the whole world's been set up for this moment. I don't know if it's true, that the Rebbe said the reason for the spread of technology is because the whole world is going to see the coming of Mashiach at the same time. Now, let's remember a train of thought. Right. So, one of the things that, of course, that's going to happen is that all the nations of the world are going to come to the Rebbe. Now, the whole world has been set up for the recognition of Mashiach. Because I remember speaking to many Muslims, very interesting, we shouldn't have a negative opinion of Muslims. Why? Because it's true, I don't want to go through all the statistics, which are not the greatest, but there's certainly, out of, let's say, 1.4 billion Muslims, there are certainly 700 million that aren't radical. And Islam to them is a religion, it's a way of life. They don't see it in a radical way. They see whatever. And in fact, they have a lot of respect for a rabbi, for Orthodox Jew, because they themselves, they have respect for God. And I had a nice conversation with a Muslim on a plane one of these days. And he said to me, and it's very clear, Mashiach is coming. So as I've mentioned it before, we have the prophecy, it's brought down inside is brought down inside in the Rambam, that when Mashiach comes, prophecy says, Sheker hinchilu lahem avoseihem, that the Gentiles will say, our ancestors gave us a lie. So Christianity and Islam is not true, right? Those, ironically, people don't know this, but Islam, which basically was a copy of Christianity, mainly Judaism, but also Christianity, and therefore they consider all the Jewish prophets, as well as they consider Yashka a prophet. And they believe that Mashiach will be Yashka. Because they just it was just a collection of everything that came before. And a little bit of a radicalism against those that didn't believe in him. And that's kind of the summary of Islam. But be that as it may, they're waiting for Mashiach. Say what you want, they're waiting for Mashiach. And the Rambam says very clearly that the reason Hashem spread Christianity and Islam in the world is because he wanted the world to be ready. It's paving the world for Mashiach. Not only Mashiach just for that moment, but on a deeper level, that people, like he says, they're debating the mitzvahs. Christianity says some mitzvahs we still do, some mitzvahs we don't do. But the point of the issue is that everybody is on board. Everybody's thinking about Torah and mitzvahs. And of course, that is the truth, because when Mashiach comes, there'll be basically Torah and mitzvahs. Now, the 7 Noahide laws, but everybody is part of the Mount Sinai experience. Mount Sinai is not only for the Jewish people. Mount Sinai is an obligation. So it's like I say, that you're on a boat, you have everything but directions. You don't feel good. Mount Sinai is the direction for Shalom. How are you? Mount Sinai is the direction for the world. So everyone has to. Everybody is applicable to Mount Sinai. Now, so what's actually going to happen? Everybody is going to come to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe will educate, etc., and therefore there will be peace in the world, right? He'll say he's right, Russia, Ukraine, Crimea. He'll make shalom. Trust me, by now even Putin wants the Rebbe to come back. He's had enough of this whole nonsense. It's not been good for his self-image, not been good for Russia, and I'm sure he too will be very happy to welcome the Rebbe with the coming of Mashiach. So today it's decided on Rosh Chodesh Nisan who is going to be the king of the world. The Rebbe is being designated. Mitzvah Shem, this Pesach will already be. The Rebbe has this very powerful statement. I have to find it, but the statement is. Rebbe says just one second. I think it was in this thing, but let me find it. Let me find it. The Rebbe says, we are ready. The main thing is to announce openly and publicly to the non-Jewish world as well that we stand prepared to offer the Pesach sacrifice in actuality in the third base of Mikdash, where we are literally about to exit this final exile and enter into the true and complete redemption led by Mashiach. So in other words, we are all ready, like we finished the Gullus. Gullus is over. Gullus is old news. Geula is the real news. And we're ready to go into Mashiach, and we're ready to go, offer the carbon. Which Jew isn't ready to go offer the carbon Pesach? We're all ready. The base of English, of course, is going to come down from the sky, and we're going to literally celebrate in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, what is the avodah? Everything in life has an avodah. Everything in life has a service. So what is our service now? So we have to understand that it's a very, very important idea. A Jew has to operate differently to a Gentile. There's a different operating system. Of course, we all have basic decency. The Torah is goodness and kindness. We all have the Torah, the mitzvahs. Whether it's 7 or 8 laws, we all have our role in this world. But fundamentally, a Jew has another way of existing. In fact, it's very interesting. In Maharal of Prague, we all know there are 4 categories. There are people, there are plants, there are animals, and there are like minerals. And the Maharal of Prague says there's a 5th category, and that is a Jew. A Jew stands in a unique category, a unique type of a human being. But it's very possible to not realize that. It's very possible for a person to think that he is just like everybody else. And if you think you're like everybody else, you'll behave like everybody else. Today I had a beautiful experience. I wrote it on my little Farbrengen WhatsApp group, and that is that I was in the Tzant, and this little kid comes by. I looked at the little kid. Everything's good, right? Life is good. He's happy. Everything's fine. And it fills me with some happiness. Why? Because psychologists say that we catch emotion. If you're hanging out with someone, if you're hanging out with people, let's say, that are very anxious, likely that you'll be anxious because we kind of think that other people think. We don't realize that other people are also catching emotions. They're also reacting. I have a friend that said that most people think what they think because they think someone else had that thought. But someone else told me that based on studies that if you have 3 people that are just hanging out, 3 people, next to a fire, within 5 minutes, one person will be copying the other person. So we have within us mirror neurons, we mirror. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because you have to have role models, but that's one of the first mitzvahs of the Torah. I think the Rambam mentioned that the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, to copy Hashem. That's why we have tzaddikim, because we're meant to copy tzaddikim. It's very fundamental. Because if you copy, the wrong people, what you end up doing is the wrong behavior, right? The very first thing that Hashem did is He made light and He made darkness. And light is the deeds of the righteous, and darkness is the deeds of the wicked. I remember we were discussing, I think it was actually about terrorism, how people could do such things. And a friend of mine, Dr. Kulik, was there, a psychiatrist, and he said a very good line. He said, maybe it's their role model. true thing, right? So a friend of mine, a bright guy, he said that you can't expect Al Capone's son not to steal, right? If a kid is brought up, and in fact, we take the whole gypsy culture, not to put anyone down, but the fact that they're thieves, they would make their money off that. So you can't expect the gypsy not to steal. For 1,000 generations, that's how their society. So why should he think that stealing is bad? I remember meeting this missionary. She was on her way to Africa. I was going as well. And she said to me, like, one of the things they teach is, like, don't steal. And they're like, what? God doesn't want us to eat? So, in other words, in a certain culture where theft is the father's a thief and the grandfather, so what do you expect? So the point is that people, and this is one of the big mistakes that the West makes, is that they have high expectations of cultures that maybe a generation ago were cannibals, where you think the guy was eating people. His grandfather literally was eating people. You think he can hold them to the same standards of people that for 1,000 years they've, even from the non-Jewish world, they had the Magna Carta, they had the Bible, they had a system, they had a government. It's different mindset. And so, but the main point of this whole thing is how do we live what the Rebbe is teaching us? The Rebbe says, I want to actually read it from the Rebbe's words, because the words of the Rebbe are extraordinary. So let's do the Rebbe. The Rebbe says like this. Our job now is to live in a supernatural way. And that's the key of a Jew. A Jew that lives in nature is really doing himself in the world a very big disservice. Because imagine you're a magician. You can wave a wand, and in that wand you can make people better. You can heal the sick. You can give money to people. You can change the world with your wand. But you say, no, I'm a muggle. I'm just like a regular person. I don't have a wand. So you hide behind. There's a Jewish woman, actually, a very special woman. So she says, we're not afraid of our darkness. We're afraid of our light. Because our light is so great, we're afraid of making someone else not look good. But really, who are you? This is her life. To not shine, because you are a child of God. In other words, the world isn't serviced by you being humble. A Jew, the world is serviced by you being arrogant. By saying, no, I'm a Jew. And I have been given the power of God to make this world a better place. And once you do that, obviously the Rebbes had to do that. They had a lot of opposition, but they knew who they were. They knew that they were empowered by Hashem to make the world better, and they did. So, and that's why the first halacha in Shulchan Aruch, we're learning from Shulchan Aruch and the Beis Medrash. So, AQM, everyone's welcome, not today, but 2 to 4 every day. So we're doing a beautiful mimer and halacha. If you want, you can join via WhatsApp as well. But the point is that the first halacha of the Torah is what? Right? Do not worry about what other people will say. Right? And everybody around the table obviously has passed that challenge. Because if you're here, you're a Tzaddik, you're a religious Jew, you obviously have the courage of conviction that I'm not going to be worried what others will say. And you did and in fact, Moshe Rabbeinu was most impressed with our generation. Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu the future. Well, believe it or not, I don't know about me, but he was impressed with you guys. This made Moshe Rabbeinu humble. Why? Because he said, look, here are people that they passed the hardest test in the universe. What's the hardest test? It's not giving your life for God. It's mockery. It's because the one thing that people, they say greater than the fear of death is public speaking. I personally like public speaking. But why? Because people are afraid that people are going to make fun of them. What are you afraid of in public speaking? You're just afraid of being made fun of, or somebody's going to criticize you. So this fear is the greatest fear that exists. And these people overcome that fear, because if you're going to become religious, like one guy, I heard a story from a guy. So he said that he met somebody that became religious. He says, I don't understand. Before I was religious, I would go Saturday, whatever, the casino and the bar. My wife didn't have a problem. My friends didn't have. Now I go to synagogue. Everybody's got a problem. Right? So it makes people uncomfortable, because, and of course, the bar casino doesn't make the Yetzer Hara uncomfortable, but the synagogue, they themselves know that they should be going, so they'd rather have somebody else, not make them uncomfortable, especially somebody close to them. That's how it goes. I mentioned it the other day that my sister had a JNUT partner. JNUT's a very beautiful organization. You can learn with someone. So she had a JNUT partner, and this person, there was a question if she was Jewish or not. So my sister is very bright. She says, no, she's not Jewish. So I said to her, how do you know she's not Jewish? She said, every mitzvah I tell her to do, she does it right away. A Jew doesn't just do, but in a way it's a quality. A Jew has to make sure that it's the right thing, and then he has a Yetzer Hara that tells him, and then he's got two friends and that tell him. So if you do it, you go to somebody who just says yes right away, chances are it's a Gentile. Yeah, why not? Why shouldn't I put on tefillah? What's the big deal? But the Jew is, and in fact, this back and forth is a good thing, because when the Jew actually does it, he does it with real convictions. When a Jew becomes religious, they stick around. They're not just having an emotional experience here. So that's actually one of the great things, and part of the Rebbe says in a Maimer, one of the ideas of Mashiach is what we call Didur B'Tachtoinu, Hashem dwelling below. And what does that mean? It actually means in our own mind, because the mind is in a way the lowest thing that exists, because it's cold, it's calculated, doesn't make sense. It's not like working on an emotion. And when the mind itself comes to recognize, no, it's true, there's a God, and this is emes, this is the truth, this is the way. So the question is, how does a Jew behave? So it's very, very simple and very, very important to understand a Jewish way, a supernatural way of living, but it has to be within the natural world, because we're not suddenly meant to be, grow wings and fly around, because that's basically an experience. You can buy a little jet for the same price. So it's not about, having some kind of, physical, emotional experience. Something much greater going on. So the question is, how do we behave? So I think there's a very good story from the Rebbe, and really this is the way the Rebbe lives, the way Avraham Avinu lives, this is the way we have to live. And that is, the story is that the Rebbe said that once, politics, I think they call it gerrymaking. What they do is if politicians, let's say left is in charge, I'm sure the right does it as well, so they'll look at a district. And if this district, you can move, let's say a zip code into this area, then it will become more left, and then the left will win for the next time. So they all try to do this, get the zip code to go in one. So this was happening in Crown Heights. And the Rebbe wasn't pleased about it, because obviously the Rebbe wanted politicians that would be good for the Jews. And so he hired a lawyer to go to protest whatever, to lodge a complaint where it was maybe the right location. And the Rebbe says, it turns out his lawyer was a shlemazel, he didn't show up. And, but something else happened. Another guy on his own bat came, and he made a protest, and he solved the situation. So we find this something interesting. Avraham Avinu was told by Hashem, go count the stars. That's how many children you'll have. Now, if I told you go count the stars, you would say, you're probably out of your mind, right? But what did Avraham Avinu do? He went to count the stars, and he had a child. And we're his children, and we're here today. In other words, this is the principle of Aleph Beis Gimel. Aleph Beis Gimel means Hashem has a goal. I don't know what his goal is. Let's say his goal is that you should, for ironic sake, his goal is that you should build the whole Israel. So Hashem tells you, I want you to, build Israel. And you're like, I just don't see how that's logically going to happen. I just don't see it. There's a story with the Rebbe, that the Rebbe once told some Chassidim to go to the President of the United States. Imagine I tell you, right, today's Thursday, it was literally like that. Thursday, I want you to go to the President, tell him something about Israel. The Rebbe was very involved in helping Israel, etc. And so, that's what they were told to do. And on Sunday, the Rebbe asked Rabbi Groner, did they go? So, Rabbi Groner didn't answer. So the Rebbe said to Rabbi Groner, you work for me, what's going on? So he had to tell the Rebbe, listen, they thought it was a little bit out of this world to just rock out at the White House and say the Lubavitcher Rebbe wants you to do something. So the Rebbe says, don't you think I also knew that it was out of this world? Mm-hmm. But had they done it, they would have opened up a new path in heaven, and they would have succeeded. Wow. In other words, Hashem comes to a little person like us, filled with our fears. What is logic? If you really think about logic, logic is fear. Why? Because a little child doesn't have logic. He has no fear, right? Jerry Seinfeld says that when a little boy is looking at comics, he's looking at his job options. I can be Superman, I can be Batman. There's different options in life. Now, now, I remember with my son, Baruch Hashem, I have 2 daughters and a son. So I once saw my son, he was on a jungle gym, but it's like a second story. I don't know how I was, whatever. He's a 2-year-old kid. And I see him. And I look at him, I go, Elias, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to jump. I was like, Elias, you can't jump. I was like, no, you just can't jump from there. What was funny is that his daughter, not his daughter, sorry, my daughters, his sisters, at the same age, they would have never thought of doing something like that. Why do they hire soldiers at the age of 18? Think about it. At 20, you're a lot smarter, but that's what they don't want. They want people that believe they can jump out of planes and jump into the ocean. This is what they need. They need stupid people. They're not looking for smart people. So the older we get, the smarter we get. The smarter we get. What have we really picked up? We've picked up usually fear. And our logic very often is our fear. And a Jew, now there is something to that, right? You can have a young person who's not logical. He just operates not in the realm of reality, which, there's a place for that. There's a time for that, for imagination. There's also a time for getting real. But at the same time, a Jew should not be logical when it comes to Hashem. You're not operating with a logical thing. And any Judaism that's stuck in logic is not Judaism, because Judaism is not logical, right? It says even a mikvah. There's no reason why a mikvah should make you pure. 40 gallons of water makes you pure. It doesn't, it's because Hashem says that this makes you pure. So what is the entire Judaism? There's a God who's supernatural, and he knows truth, and listen to him. It's very simple. And if you don't know how to listen to God, you can't hear his voice, you're not Abraham, you're not the Rebbe. So you have something called a mashpia. Go to your mashpia, because the Rebbe empowered that that the mashpia, that it could be the voice of God. And I mentioned this before, I don't know, to this group, but the first person that asked me to be his mashpia, it was very interesting, because I noticed that when he would ask me questions, at least the first few times, it was like there was a different frequency in my brain. There was something else that was like probably making sure that he was going to get the right answer. So if you want an answer from Hashem, you can ask. Hashem, and this is one of the great principles of God, that the Rebbe teaches us. Now we know that an etzem, an essential thing, is built in a scholar. It can't be revealed. For example, I can't really reveal myself to you. You can maybe experience me, but I can't reveal me. That's what I've mentioned before, is that the difference, let's say, between a marriage. Marriage is a time when people, in fact, intimacy is a time of silence. According to the halacha, it should be silent. Why? Because it's the time of experiencing another person. That's the Adam Yada, he knew. When you come over, maybe I'm repeating myself, but I'll say it anyway, you come to a friend's house, and you're like, hey, how are you? You don't really know that guy very well. You see certain cultures, very loud and boisterous. Would they give their life for the other person? No. But you go to somebody that you're close to, you grew up with him and your childhood friend. There's no big noise, but you're so close to each other because you experienced each other. You are one. Myself, I say my children, if I go to my children, there's no loud hellos, because I lived with them for many, many years. You're like, it's your child. You don't have to say hello to them. It's like, yeah. In fact, there was a guy, very interesting guy. He came to the Rebbe. The Rebbe actually asked a few people. The Rebbe asked, I'm going to tell you an amazing story. A lot of people don't know this. In fact, very few people know it, because I heard it directly from the guy. Very interesting story. There was a guy, a Yid from Israel. He was a pilot in the 73 war, and he was shot down. Unfortunately, there were many losses in the 73 war. They didn't listen to the Rebbe. The Rebbe was very against the Bar Lev line, very stupid military position. The Rebbe was, by the way, I heard this, again, many people don't know this, because I heard it almost directly. I heard this from Rabbi Bernard Olav Shalom from South Africa, who heard it directly from Ariel Sharon. He said that he had a file this thick from the Rebbe on military strategy. And Rabin said, by them, the Rebbe was like one of the greatest military analysts, because they were generals. They appreciated military strategy. It was one of the greatest. Of course, the Rebbe was the Rebbe, but he was also very well read. In fact, he was in France, and he was close to the general. The general showed him the line, and the general offered him to come to his whatever castle The Rebbe was like, no. The Rebbe was like, this is not a good line. It's not a good defensive line. And the Rebbe was right. And the Rebbe was whatever. In every single field, Atzmos is perfect in everything. The Rebbe was very against the Bar Lev line because they were right in front of the guns of Egypt. It was ridiculous. They should have been a mile back. Had Egypt crossed the Suez Canal, they were outside of the guns. They could have just pounced on Egypt. But thousands of lives of lost. So this guy was shot down in 73. And in fact, the Rebbe says, I don't know if you know this, but he said that the miracle of, I think, the 73 war, when Egypt didn't come into Israel, because they were on the border for 2 days. They could have just marched right in. The Golden Meir had Sinai. The miracle was greater than the miracles of the Torah. These were greater miracles. And those 2 days, through Henry Kissinger, they sent these, whatever, I think they were stingrays or something. They were these little missiles that go against tanks, and they blew up all the tanks, and the rest is history. But that was a miracle. In any event, this guy gets shot down, and he's in Egypt. This is some kind of other miraculous story where a guy like the Rebbe kind of showed up in his cell and he just took him out. But be that as it may, this guy ended up, I guess, after the war, in prisoner of exchange, and he was, the Toronto Jewish community took him there. He had to have operations, and the Rebbe heard about him, and the Rebbe asked that he should come. And I heard the story personally from him, and he came to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, as soon as he came in, and it's interesting because the Rebbe's relationship, if you are very close to somebody, you don't have to start with pleasantry. Right? The Rebbe, like when Hashem spoke to Avraham Avinu, like his first thing is Lech Lecha, go. Right? First thing to Avraham, to Adam, the first words to man is Ayeka. Where are you? What's going on here? In other words, you're already close. You have a dialogue in their heart. I think I was talking about this guy, I think Gordon Zacks, who the Rebbe called him. He mentions on the video, the Gem video, this is not the military, it's a different guy. When he walked in the room, the Rebbe said to him, like, Gordon, I see that you're taking good care of your body and your mind, like, what's with your soul? Like, he said it was interesting, like he never met the Rebbe before, but the Rebbe knew him, the Rebbe met him. So that's why the Rebbe was starting the conversation from where he was up to, right? So be that as it may, this guy comes to the Rebbe called him, and the Rebbe knew his whole history. He knew he came from very chashuva people, whatever, many people in Israel, not most of us. There's great ancestry. And the Rebbe said to him something that was very rare for the Rebbe to say to someone. The Rebbe says, why aren't you religious? And the guy said to the Rebbe as follows, very interesting. The Rebbe said, when I look at the arguments between Satmar and Chabad and whatever, Litvish and Siddish and this and that, he says, I love every Jew equally. So he told me that Rebbe got up, he kissed him on the forehead, and he says, you're the best Jew I ever met. Isn't that amazing? It's an amazing story. So to the Rebbe, the guy that loves all Jews equally, that's the best Jew that he ever met. There's another story where this guy, he went to Rebbe and he, everybody would go, you get kosher bracha, you're getting a bracha from the Rebbe, it's no joke. But he right away was like, Rebbe, I need a bracha for this guy, he's got like 4 little cups. And I don't remember the exact story, but something like the Rebbe was like, and what about you? He said, yeah, me too. And the Rebbe was like, what kind of an amazing guy. His first thought is everybody else, right? So it's like the famous story that there was a chassid after he's buried here. He was in Tzfas for a little bit. Menachem Mendel of Paradok. He's buried in Tveria. Paradok, yeah. Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk. He was the Rebbe after the Magid. So it's a very big position. And Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, he went to so the Alter Rebbe and a couple of Chassidim, they actually went to him after the Maggid passed away that he was going to be like the new Rebbe. The story that he was Ata Haresa, he was 45 minutes before Ata Haresa on Simchas Torah. So finally the Alter Rebbe went over to him. He's like, what's going on? They asked Alter Rebbe to go. He says, I have 100 explanations on Ata Haresa, and I can't make them all work out together. It's not matching. He says, don't worry, start. You'll have another 100 later, and So, in other words, the tzaddikim worked on a different frequency. They had a mission from Hashem, and they would do the mission, and Hashem would make it work. So, this is a very important idea to understand. The idea is that we are agents of Hashem. Whether you like it or not, you're an agent. You didn't choose to be born. You didn't choose your role. You didn't choose your mission. It chose you. We are agents of Hashem. And it cannot be that Hashem will fail. Hashem, it says in the Haftarah that we say on a fast day, Dirshu Hashem v'yimatzah k'uyu v'yosei karev, I'm not sure the exact words, but because when I send out a word, it happens. When I send out a little bit of rain to water the ground, to give a seed growth, to make wheat, then somebody's actually going to get that wheat, and somebody's actually going to eat. So Hashem's words don't come back to him without success. If Hashem tells you to do something, it will be successful. What's the issue? The issue is our little minds don't understand how. And that's the idea what the Rebbe is telling us. The Rebbe is telling us, you are a supernatural being. Not only that, some very powerful statements the Rebbe is saying here. The Jew should demonstrate how nature is in fact miraculous by performing whatever is required of him in his divine service, showing that he accomplishes this successfully despite his soul being housed within a corporeal body in a physical world. A body and a world that are bound by the rules of nature to the extent that they consider a miracle to be a novelty and a wonder. In other words, if we're in heaven and heaven operates in another way, you think, I think in heaven it's almost like you think and you're there, it's like a different kind of system. So that's normal. In this world, it's not normal to be able to fly, right? But if you really believed in Hashem, you could fly. Story with the Tzemach Tzedek once had to deliver a message. So he told his gabbai to drink a Zexin Einziger, which is like 96% proof alcohol. I'm sure you've seen that. I think he gave him maybe 2-3 cups. He put in a little paper and he said, fly. And he flew to the Rav, delivered the note, and the Rav had him fly back. So anything is possible. So the boundaries of nature only apply. So you're living in a world, and what can happen is you can start to think that these limitations are your limitations. A Jew, nevertheless, shows that he does not take the rules of nature into account when it comes to performing his divine service. Instead, he conducts himself in a supernatural manner. Moreover, it does not come as an innovation, a wonder to him to act this way, since such conduct quickly becomes his natural way of behaving. It's very important, the words of the Rebbe here. Very, very important. In other words, you have to start behaving like a Jew. A Jew is a soldier of God. A soldier doesn't, there's only one thing that the army needs, right? The army doesn't need your head, like the Rebbe says. Why does the army need actually that a person should have a head? So the sling of the gun should stay on. So, right? They just need a location for the sling of the gun. There's basically one rule of the army: just follow orders. And that is the rule of a Jew. Don't be smarter than Hashem. Just listen to him. Follow orders. You say, but how can this happen? How will it be? Don't worry about it. He's the general. He's running the whole world. You say, but the whole world is natural and there's 7 billion people that don't work this way. That's very sad. But you're different, right? Just imagine for a moment, you are not a private soldier, but you're actually a general in the army. And the king tells you to do something. The whole army is yours. The whole world is only there to make you succeed. That's why the army exists. And that's really the story of a Jew. When a Jew has a mission from Hashem, the whole world is only there for your mission. It's designed for your mission. And that's the truth. It's just a game, and you're a player. And if you do your part, you're going to win. You're going to make Hashem win, the Rebbe win, the world's going to win. We're just getting warmed up there. Moreover, it does not come as an innovation or wonder to him to act this way, since such conduct quickly becomes his natural way of behaving. And this is very important. The Rebbe behaved, if you actually think about it, the Rebbe behaved in a supernatural way. The Rebbe looked very natural, but there was nothing natural about the Rebbe. Think about his schedule. Answering questions all day. I mean, never mind what we didn't see, which was supernatural. At night, he would talk to people. Then the Rebbe, also, something that I think a lot of us don't really pay attention to, is the Rebbe was a very humble person. And the Rebbe really worked with the idea of Hashgacha process, which works with us also. For example, we all know the very famous talk. The Rebbe said it 1,000 times. The idea that Mashiach, the Gulf War, was the time of Mashiach, Kiyazman Gulasam, it's the time of redemption, and Mashiach will say the year that Mashiach will be revealed in, and the Rebbe accepted, and Mashiach that year, etc., etc., 1991. But what's interesting is, where did the Rebbe get this medrash? This was a medrash. Did the Rebbe read it in his own library and say, oh, this medrash is talking about now? In fact, somebody read this medrash, and he told my uncle to hang it up in 770. So my uncle hung up a little medrash that somebody thought relates to Goal 4. The Rebbe came down into 770, and he looked, and he stopped, and he read that medrash. Very rare for the Rebbe to stop. In other words, the Rebbe downloaded a message that this is true, and that was true to him. And that's the same way that was a Goal 4.
I understand, but where's Mashiach then if he said this is the time?
Well, first of all, the Jews were let out of Russia. Since that time, the Soviet Union collapsed. This Jew is here because of that. So the world dramatically changed. I'm not going to go into much of that, but the very short answer to that is that it was the first time in 2,000 years Jews around the world are free to practice Judaism everywhere. The world became a much better place. Communism, a tyranny of note. Even China, which was communistic, stopped, and it's nothing compared to what it was. People are allowed to have jobs, and they're allowed to much more freedom. I think you're allowed to have more than one kid today. So you can't compare. You could leave the country. You can't compare what's going on. And I think India, there was a massive change. The Rebbe said these were changes that affected the majority of the world, and they happened in peaceful ways. Normally, revolutions had bloodshed. The Russian Revolution, 3 million people were murdered. And it never happened in human history that nations should just get up, okay, we're changing the way we operate. We're going to be a normal, nice country now. It's amazing. So, getting back to the subject, what was the subject?
About being extraordinary, about the Rebbe was so humble, he was so busy doing so much.
Thank you. So the Rebbe, I need some of that memory stuff. So the Rebbe said that, so what do we see? Now, this is also something interesting. Again, many people don't know this, but when did Chabad start Shabbos Mevarchim Tehillim? We all know we do Shabbos Mevarchim Tehillim. When did that start? It started with the previous Rebbe. Why did it start? So I had a great-grandfather and I actually saw this in my uncle's house. I had a great-grandfather, maybe a great-great-grandfather, who, he was a very big tzaddik. Every day he would wake up at 4 a.m. and say the whole Tehillim, that none of his descendants should cry out. Just like today you have your crazy liberal insanities. So then the insanity was communism. There was a Russian Jew, he came to Israel, who grew up. He said, I remember my friends in the university, they thought this was utopia. He said, whenever Jews join a militant movement, they eventually become the end of it. So, in the end of the day, I mean, it goes against them, as we see very clearly that the left has become very anti-Semitic, etc., etc. Because militant and radicalism is just hate, and hate is its own animal. It just wants destruction. It's self-hate and it's hate of life. But in any event, getting back to the point, so he used to say Tehillim every day, 4 a.m. And then Rebbe Rashab said, there's a Jew in this town, I think it was maybe Hummel. He moved to a small city. He didn't want his kids to be among the secular culture. And that he prays that his descendants, none of his descendants should cry out. None of his descendants should leave the religion. And it says, and so should it be. And amazingly, every single one of his descendants is a religious Jew, which is very, very rare. Because even if you think, Leibel Trotsky was a descendant of Lubavitcher Hasidim. I know some of his cousins. So the point is that these were people that arrested the Frierdiker Rebbe, they were descendants also of Hasidim. Right? Their grandparents were their grandfathers. Not like far. So you see how far a person can fall with wrong ideology. So he wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe this idea that every Shabbos, Hasidim should say the whole Tehillim. Frierdiker Rebbe said, no, not every Shabbos, but we'll do it every Shabbos Mubarak. I think the Rambam was an idea. There was a group, a yeshiva, Lubavitch yeshiva, maybe in Venezuela, and they wrote to the Rebbe that they started this order of Rambam. The Rebbe took it on. But when the Rebbe took something on, it's very important to understand this is what it means to live supernatural. Because to live supernatural doesn't mean to live outside of reality. My father told me, I don't remember, I think it was Hillel Parcher that said, that a chassid is gvul. Chesed is like where we live in this world. A tzaddik is bli gvul. Tzaddikim, they live higher, they can give blessings for anything. But a rebbe is bli gvul info. The trick of life is not to be beyond this world. That's not a trick. In fact, a lot of people have escapism of different forms, and even spirituality can be an escapism. I mentioned this that I once made a class in the city that I was teaching, and the only guy that showed up was the Catholic priest. A nice guy, and we had a great conversation. And to him, the one that he liked most was this group of, they called them Elijahs, whatever. The Catholics, Baruch Hashem, they've got a lot of money. Not sure how they got it all, but I guess when you get tithe from a billion people, it can add up. And so, in any event, they 30,000 people till this very day, somewhere, and they basically don't speak. It's very nice. You don't speak. You don't have to deal with people, which can be quite nice for many people. But at the same time, you haven't achieved anything. You've escaped reality, and that's the problem with Buddhism and monks and this, because you're not actually heading in any direction. You're heading away from people. You're not heading towards people. You're not heading towards the goal in life. So Yiddishkeit is the opposite. It's very important that we understand this. It's to be supernatural in the world. To be a Rebbe, basically. What did Rebbeim do? What did Rebbes do? They weren't so involved with God. They were really involved with people. The Rebbe said you have to give up everything for your serving people, your spirituality, your physicality, learning the Bas Laganim. It's all to do in the service of people, and that's the service of Hashem. And that's the highest level. But the thing is, to do that, you could do that, what we call like a Baal bus. You could do that as a physical person. There's the structures, there's the boundaries, or you could do that in a supernatural way. There's nothing stopping me right now, there was, just to give an example, there was once a time, I don't know if it was Purim, whatever it was, the Rebbe said, however much money you have in your pockets, give it to tzedakah. The guy was a diamond merchant. Now we know diamond merchants, they have to purchase with cash, right? It's not a credit card business. And I don't know if you know this, but how do they make a deal in the diamond industry? They shake hands, say bracha v'atzlacha. Even the goyim say bracha v'atzlacha, or mazel and bracha, because it was basically a Jewish industry, and they literally exchange money. There's no contract, and if somebody rips someone off, they have a blacklist, and he's never in the business again. That's how the diamond industry works. So the guy had like over $1 million cash in his pocket, like 1970. That's worth, I don't know now, 20 million or something. Gave it all to tzedakah, and he got it back. Because when the Rebbe says to do something, when Hashem says to do something, and this is a very, very important principle in life, because everybody seeks by nature gain and not loss. And in fact, if your gain is maybe negative against yourself, then there's a problem, psychological, there's people that they hurt themselves. So gain can be, or people that, a healthy person the body should be gained. You should want to have more money. And, there are things that you should want. They're healthy desires. Okay, maybe you should use it in the right way, but the point is that a healthy person wants good for himself. So when the Eibishter tells you to do something, he's looking for your good. It's like you're his child. He's looking for your gain. He's looking for the gain of the other person. So often in life, we trusted somebody, and we found that actually they were selfish or they were evil, and so we're not sure, can I trust anymore? But that's somebody. That's not the Eibishter. If it was your parent, you can trust him. Just because this guy, a very special guy, long story short, he said, just because you lost trust in people doesn't mean you should lose trust in God. So it's okay to lose trust in people. It doesn't mean you should hate, but, it says somewhere in the Gemara, like, there was a story that somebody came to whatever Marayim, maybe it was around town here, and those days they used to have ladders to the people like in spots. People would sleep on the ceiling. I think it was the Rebbe of Ovruch, the big tzaddik, when they had the earthquake here. Famous story that his shul part of his shul didn't collapse. And it was very difficult when he was first in Tzfas, and I think some of the people didn't like him. He's the new Rebbe, whatever. And eventually, he was thinking of going, but he heard like noise on the roof, and it was like, "What's going on?" I said, "What do you mean? We just said Mashiv Ruach Umayid Geshman, so we're getting ready to take in everything because the rain is going to come." So he was so impressed with the sincerity of the Jews that he said, okay, I'm staying here. So the point is that a person can live in this kind of dimension of fear. A person can live, unfortunately, in fear. Or they can live in the dimension that actually this whole world is a video game. And I am created by the Creator to make the world better, which is literally what it was. You know, when Adam and Rishon was made in the world. What was the world? It was a video game. God made a world, and He told him what to do. And it's good. It's a good way to feel. And if he did his thing, it would have brought Mashiach. And we all have that capacity as well to bring Mashiach. So what do we find with the Rebbe's is that they were very in tune with the mission. The thing is, the mission is you're always on mission. There's a certain part of us. Guy wrote a book. I think he said, like, almost everything I ever needed to know I learned in kindergarten. So he wrote a book. And one of his things in the book was he wishes that there was like a council of wise men that after, I don't know, maybe you're 70 years old and you did your whole thing in life, they come and they tap you on the shoulders with a stick and they say, whatever, Roger, you're such a fine person, you did a good life. From now on, you don't have to work, everything's coming your way. That's basically what we want. But that is not life. One of the things about the Rebbe is life is accomplishment, right? Dealing with somebody they're going through whatever, not so happy. But there's no way to help somebody unless they do good. Unless you do something that's going to make it do good, that's the way to be happy. You do good, feel good. It's a simple recipe. There's no tricks, no psychologists, no pills. Nothing's going to help. Because if you do good, you can feel it. Now, it's not to say that sometimes people can be depressed or overwhelmed and have anxiety that creates a certain feeling which is not happy. But generally speaking, if you don't have the negative factors, there's only one way to be happy, and that is to do good. That's the only way. Of course, Torah and mitzvahs, these are beautiful things, and these help us in relationships. But at the end of the day, a person has to feel, because every physical pleasure becomes something you're used to. It stops giving you pleasure. You know, eat ice cream every day, even no matter how much you like it, you'll stop wanting ice cream. So doing good is never something.
I had an ice cream truck once. I stopped eating the ice cream.
That's so funny. So here we have evidence, real evidence. So what is the bottom line? That we are always on mission. But the thing is, it's amazing, because what's the mission? The mission is helping your fellow Jews. The mission is listening to Hashem. And Hashem is teaching us, and He's telling us, and He has His ways of communicating. If not, you go to Mashpia, there are different ways you can do it. And you know what? The amazing thing is, if you just see yourself, that's my only mission. You know, the soldier doesn't worry about the enemy. He doesn't worry about his mother or his father. He is like, I am on mission. I am a soldier. I'm going to do what I got to do. And if you just get your mindset like that, then you'll always succeed. Because the army, the whole world, the general, the creator, the universe is with you in this mission. And so this is His mission just as much as it's your mission. And this is how we're going to make ourselves in the world happy. L'chaim l'vracha.